Bene, allora come vi avevo anticipato, noi questa mattina faremo diversi talk che hanno a che fare con l'intelligenza artificiale, ma nello specifico ora ci spostiamo nel campo medico. Lei è la professoressa ordinaria presso il Dipartimento di Scienze Informatiche dell'Università Bocconi di Milano e ricercatrice presso l'Università di Oxford, dove ha un laboratorio di ricerca. Signore e signori, Francesca Buffa. Applauso.
Buongiorno. I'm going to speak in English now, and this is because I always spoke about science in English. Artificial intelligence holds a big promise for science, for biological science, and for medicine. And for medicine, it's quite important, right? Because it can potentially affect all of us. Now, artificial intelligence is not new to medicine. In the 1975, there was the first workshop in America where it was discussed, it was a little bit of brainstorming, and it was discussed the possible application of this new artificial intelligence to medicine. This was in the 70s. So medicine have used artificial intelligence for the past 50 years, 50. So why are we excited now? What has changed? Why before was just a bit of a theoretical exercise, and now it is really exciting? This is because there are two key factors now that were not present before. One, the technology is much more advanced. We can use AI now to do things that we could not do before. You know very well from this conference and others that the tools are now very powerful. Two, for the first time in history, in medicine, there is a collection of big data. We have more data than ever before, and now it's not a problem to collect data, it is a problem to analyze them and interpret them. And so, without powerful computational techniques, we cannot even start to look at this data. So this is why everybody is very excited. And I have here behind me some of the data we can produce now and feed into AI. So these are two publications, Science and Nature, two big projects that raised in the 2001, published the first sequencing of the human genome, the DNA of an individual. And that took years and took a lot of money, millions of dollars and pounds. Now we can sequence a whole genome, so the whole DNA of an individual, in a few hours and with a few hundred pounds, dollars, or euros. So obviously this changes the landscape dramatically. So we can now take clinical samples from each individual, blood samples, tissue samples, samples from a disease, and sequence them. And we can sequence the DNA of an individual in every individual, or multiple times in the life of an individual. So we are accumulating petabyte-size databases, and we need to organize them, search them, and learn from them. Why do we want to learn from these databases? Well, obviously, if you are able to predict the risk that an individual has of developing a disease by looking at the individual DNA, then we can monitor that individual and hopefully prevent that individual to have a disease. An individual that already has a disease, we can choose the best treatment for the individual. And mining this data, though, is a big, big task. These are big databases and quite complex. And so without powerful computational techniques, we cannot even start. So having now big data, methods like the methods that we have now in the AI landscape are really, really important. They give us possibilities that we didn't have before. And we cannot just sequence the DNA of a human, we can sequence the DNA of a bacteria, of a virus, follow how rapidly a virus is evolving, and these are things that were just not possible before. Now, we can also do something else. We can start from a sequence of DNA and understand how the protein made from that sequence folds, how it organizes itself in these beautiful structures that you can see behind me. And that's very important because how a protein is organized in space, in this beautiful structure, determines how a protein's function or doesn't function. And obviously in disease, we have proteins that stop functioning. So to know how proteins function and don't function is key for us to be able to cure people. Now, this is only possible because we have a lot of data and because we have way to learn with deep learning algorithms. And these are examples of protein that are very important for us. So this is a computer reconstruction of a protein called P53 attached to the DNA. You see in pink the double helix, right? When P53 attaches to the DNA, it activates the other genes which carry on vital functions. And one of the vital functions that P53 carries on is to stop cells that have a mutation, that have a damage in the DNA, dividing. So that is what happens when we have cancer. We have a lot of cells that have mutations and keep dividing. P53 prevents us getting cancer. So it's called the guardian of the genome. And animals like elephants, who don't get cancer, have 20 copies of P53, a lot of copies, to just make sure that if one mutates, they have the others. And P53 is one of the most mutated genes in cancer. It loses its function, it loses its normal function, and so the disease progresses. So understanding something like what this protein does and what goes wrong, obviously, give us more instrument to address cancer cure. And so another example here that is very familiar to all of you. This is the COVID spike protein. COVID is at the top of the figure. The spike protein is the red one, and is binding to something called ACE2 receptor. And below there is the cell surface. The ACE2 receptor is the way that COVID uses to get into our cells. So by this very interaction between this red object and this blue object, COVID gets into the cell, and if you understand this interaction well, we can stop that, and we can fight pathogens. So, we have a lot of tools. And because we have a lot of new tools and a lot of new data, there is a big promise. And now it is the time where artificial intelligence applied to medicine can really make a difference. We waited for 50 years, but now we are ready. And in fact, there are already a lot of applications of AI in medicine. I spoke about genomic data. We can think about imaging data. AI in imaging data can spot the disease much earlier and allow us to treat patients much earlier. And obviously, you see the doctor there of the future. This is increasing, and the job of a doctor is empowered by these tools. The job of a biologist is empowered by these tools. So we need multidisciplinary teams with artificial intelligence developers who understand the problems, they understand how to develop useful tools for real problems, and medical doctor, biologists, scientists who understand these tools and can think of good ways of using them. And obviously in medicine, goes without saying, that anything that goes near to a patient has to be safe. So safety, ethical development of AI, privacy-preserving AI is not a question in medicine. Nothing can go near to a patient if it doesn't follow specific guidelines. Of course, now the technology is developing fast, so these guidelines have to develop fast. So AI can only be useful in medicine if the guideline develop aside the technology, so that we can have an AI technology that is safe and usable for the patients. But I hope that I gave you the impression and the understanding of why now is a really golden moment for AI and medicine and the application of AI to medicine. Thank you.